Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. I'm your host, Mike Moynihan, this week, every week. Happy to be here. Happy to be bringing you guys episode number 101. I want to thank all the guys that were part of last week's episode where we were just, reminiscing, telling stories and having a good time as the podcast reached 100 episodes. On to number 200, I guess. And we're going to start this batch of 100 episodes by doing something that I've wanted to do from the genesis of this entire podcast idea. And that is really deep diving into sets. I've done it on occasion, but I'm going to do a series. This will be the first week of the series that's going to really focus on the post-war 1948 to 1955 Bowman years. And we're going to look each week at one of those years. We're going to look at the set. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to bring in a person who just loves that set and loves talking about it every week, a different guest to cover each of those years. And over the next 6 weeks, if you're not a Bowman fan, you might not even care. If you're not a Bowman fan, though, I would tell you, give this a shot because you might possibly feel the same way that I do. And over the last decade or so, I have really fallen in love and grown to love the Bowman sets from 48 to 55. Today, we're going to start, and this isn't going to be in order. This is going to kind of be all over the place, which will keep you on your toes a little bit and wondering each week which set we're going to do. This week, we're doing 1954 Bowman. To talk about this set with me, I brought on my good friend, Chris from Missouri. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. I feel like I'm 2 in a row. I think I'm enjoying this.
You were one of the guys last week helping me celebrate 100. Thank you for doing that, by the way. It was a total blast to see so many great collectors and my friend, all of y'all are my friends too. So that means a lot to me that y'all wanted to do that. So thank you.
Oh, that was so much fun. We could have stayed on for a long time.
Chris, what I want to do first as we go through 54 Bowman, which is just a fantastic set. But there are some things about 54 Bowman that I think you and I would probably change, and we'll go through that towards the end as well. I want to read basically a description of the set, kind of some things. Now, there's a great website called Cardboard Connection. If you've never used it before or looked at it, it's got a lot of great write-ups and gives you a lot of information about different sets, both modern, ultra-modern, and vintage. And so I'm going to read their write-up on 54 Bowman because I think it does a good job summarizing this set. And I know when I read it, I learned a couple things. Hopefully you guys out there, as I read this, you might learn something too. So here we go. By 1954, the battle between Topps and Bowman for the hearts and minds and pocket change of American kids was still in full force. The collateral damage from that fight was seen in some of the cards from the 54 Bowman baseball set, as Norman, of course, goes nuts right now. So hold on one second. That's okay, Julie's. That's going to be great. If only I edited things out. The collateral damage from that fight between Topps and Bowman was seen in some of the cards from the 54 Bowman set. Not only were several cards corrected for errors after being rushed so quickly into production, but one ended up being withdrawn altogether and replaced. The set contains 224 cards. However, an estimated 40 variations are said to exist. bringing the total card count for the set builder, kind of that master set builder type person, to 264 cards. Printed and distributed in 2 series, cards number 1 through 128 make up the first series, and 129 through 224 comprise the second series. Unusual for the era, the high number series is not all that much more difficult to find than the low number series. Measuring 2.5 by 3 3/4, 1954 Bowman baseball card fronts consist of a player portrait. Though not nearly as rich in color as the company's 1953 baseball card set, a small pastel-colored box in a lower corner contains the player's signature or block print for certain late series cards, while a white border surrounds the picture and box. The Bowman card backs include a bat and ball graphic. The card number is located inside the ball. The player's name is inside the bat. There's a few vital statistics. A short biography is also included. On the back, there's also like a trivia question at the bottom, and there's a little box that has the 53 stats for that player. And then you have the answer to the trivia question on the bottom. We should do like a trivia. That'd be kind of fun. Like try to see if we can answer some of these trivia questions. The set utilizes a unique numbering system. This I did not know. A unique numbering system that rotates between all 16 teams, so each team has a consistent pattern. For instance, the Yankees are found on cards 1, 17, 33, 49. So every 16th card is a Yankee, basically. The Red Sox are next. They're card 2, 18, 34, 50, and so on. Each team has 14 cards, unless, of course, you include both number 66 cards, which makes 15 for the Red Sox. We'll get to that in a second. Because the most valuable card in the 1954 Bowman baseball checklist is Ted Williams. However, the high values are not simply because he was one of the biggest players in the game at the time. Topps managed to sign him to an exclusive contract in 1954, so Bowman had to pull card number 66 and replace him with teammate Jimmy Pearsall. This extreme scarcity results in huge values, but most collectors consider the set complete with the card number 66 Pearsall in place of the Williams card. Despite the loss of Ted Williams, there are several stars in the 1954 Bowman set that could not be found in the top set of the same year, including Mickey Mantle, Bob Feller, Roy Campanella, Robin Roberts, and Pee Wee Reese. Unfortunately for the set, there are very few notable rookie cards. The top options include Don Larson and Harvey Keene, which is made even more disappointing considering the rookie cards found in the 54 top set. One oddity of note is the cards of the Baltimore Orioles players. Their fans may either be amused or infuriated by the cards that Bowman printed. 1954 was the team's first season in Baltimore after playing as the St. Louis Browns since 1901. The move was announced and the new team name and logo had not been unveiled yet, but there were no, even though the logos had been unveiled, there were no pictures of any of the Orioles in their new uniforms. So Bowman's art department kind of did some ad-libbing and made do with their best guesses, and it resulted in some of the pictures having the bird looking the wrong way on some of the caps. So that's a brief synopsis of the 54 Bowman set. Anything in there that was new news to you, Chris?
I hope I'm not tested over this later. Holy cow, that's quite a bit of information. But the fact that I did not know about the Orioles cards like that, but I thought I always thought, or I read somewhere, that all the mistakes that anybody's found on those cards had been corrected, which I believe causes the variations to those cards. But I believe they felt very good about at the end what they corrected on their mistakes.
Yeah, the mistakes were usually in one of the statistics that were listed on the card. They'd have a wrong number or transpose numbers or whatever. And typically when you get them graded, they will tell you which variation it is that you have, if it's one of those cards. And so for me personally, I just want one of them. I'm not trying to get both of them. I'm not that bad when I'm trying to complete this Hall of Famer run for that set. What do you love, Chris, about 54 Bowman? Like, what made it be the set that you wanted to talk to me about?
It meant a lot to me growing up. You know, the story of me is I was always a vintage card. Cards were given to me, or I earned at a really early age, and lucked into some. And one card in particular that I had it was my dad's favorite card, and I went to a show, and when I was growing up, there wasn't very many shows at all, and before the age of before I went to college, I'd gone to one show in my life that I would consider a show. I went to some stuff that was almost like a garage sale with two guys setting up, but this was a real live show, and the floor just seemed huge to me. As a kid, it seemed as big as the National, and I had cards and I wanted to go to the show, and the show was 7 miles away from the house, exactly 7 miles away from the house, in the big town of Sedalia, Missouri, and that. I went to this table, and this guy had some of the 54 Bowmans out, and I knew that I had one card in that set, and that card that I had was a Roy Campanella card. Now, that Roy Campanella was my dad's favorite player, so I'd had that card out a lot, and it was worn out kind of stuff. And so when I was looking at this dealer's table, I said, "Oh, Dad, I have a card like that." And my dad said, and I said, it's the Roy Campanella. It's the same year. And the dealer said, "Kid, you sure you have that card?" And I said, I'm 100% sure. And he said, "Well, if you take my name and number and bring me the card, mail me the card, and I will give you this." And I forget exactly what he was offering me for it. And he needed to complete a set. And he was I was pointing towards some cards, and he was putting a stack of stuff together. And I said, "Dad, can you take me home?" My dad ran me home. And, I know the dealer was like, "Yeah, sure. This, 11 or 12-year-old kid has his card." So my dad ran me home. I got the card. I brought it in, and the guy gave me more than that card was worth, because it was, like I said, it was going to complete his set of the whole set. And when I traded that 54 Roy Campanella, but before I walked away, the guy gave me a bag of cards, and he said, these aren't worth anything, but they were cards that had been wet and dried out, and they just kind of stuck together in different things.
Right.
And they were all his 54 Bowman doubles. And so I had, they were in terrible condition, but I tore them apart, and I messed with them. And so I love the set, and I wish I had more cards in it. And that's a goal of mine this year, is to get more 54 Bowmans that are gradable.
Fair enough. I'm lucky enough, blessed enough, that I have the entire Hall of Fame run. By the way, there are, let me look real quick. I think 24 Hall of Famers in 54 Bowman. I'll give you the exact number, and I think that's right, but I will double check that, because this was one of the first runs I tried to do. I did 53 Bowman. I'm like, why not do 54? This was before I launched into getting all of them for every set from the entire decade. But so I've had a lot of these a long time. Yeah, 24 is the number of Hall of Famers. I have 23 of them. I'm missing Larry Doby is the only one I'm missing.
Wow.
For that. And like I said in that, when I was talking through it, there are some great players in the 54 Bowman set, and we'll go through those in a second. But what is most striking to me about 54 Bowman is how many people it's missing. I mean, think about 54 tops. You've got Hank Aaron. There's no Bowman card in 54 for Hank Aaron, a rookie card. Al Kaline, right? Tommy Lasorda doesn't have a 54 Bowman. I'm thinking of other I'm missing
True.
a huge one. Ernie Banks doesn't
Banks.
have a 54 Bowman. So
So the four rookie cards, the three best rookie cards, and Lasorda are not in this set. That's
what's great is 54 Tops is a phenomenal set. No question. It's from a design. I mean, they did it right. 54 Bowman originally felt like, especially compared to 54 Tops, less exciting, right? It's a picture with a little, like it said, pastel box at the bottom with a player's signature. Here's a Nellie Fox that I'm showing right now. But look at how cool that Nellie Fox is. Like it's not quite an action shot, right? It's certainly posed, but Nelly, leaning over to the ball's already in his glove, and I'm sure he has a chaw in his mouth because he does. Nelly Fox. I mean, card number 1 in the Bowman set is Phil Rizzuto, which actually I didn't pull that card because my 54 Bowman Phil Rizzuto was a card that my dad took to a game one time when he was working for the Rangers and got Phil Rizzuto to sign it. He went to a shop somewhere and hey, the Yankees are in town. Do you have any Phil Rizzuto cards? And he bought a 54 Bowman Rizzuto, got it signed. I ultimately sent it in to get it slabbed, not because I was worried about the authenticity, but just to protect it. And the card came back a 3. Again, I didn't care about that. It's zero matter to me, but that's still in the box or still in the beast. I didn't pull it out, but I want to run through these a little bit because I just think they're awesome. You've got Nellie Fox is in there. Richie Ashburn is a great card. And because the picture is the main focus of the 54 Bowmans, right? You've got Orestes Mini Minoso.
I got one of those getting graded right now.
Do you?
Yeah.
I just got this one. This was one I bought in one of the collections from Chasing Cardboard. It came back a 3.5, and I'm like, that's the prettiest 3. And I'm like, yep, I'll take that all day. I can't remember I got a bunch of 6s in these, but again, these were cards that are in very old slabs. I've had them forever. I don't know, honestly, if I cracked them and sent them in, if they would still get the same grade. Ralph Kiner was there. Then you've got George Kell. I'm going to go through these quickly. I've got Hoyt Wilhelm, great relief pitcher. The Pee Wee Reese is a great card because, again, the focus is the player, right? And it's not busy for sure. In fact, it's an incredibly simplistic design. Enos Slaughter. This is a great card. The Eddie Matthews. It's a really nice one. Here's the Willie Mays. I've got that in a 4.
I have that in a 3.
Love it. I love it when we can show the same card. It's so cool. Here's that Roy Campanella you were talking about.
I end up getting one back.
Nice. We've got dueling. I got a 6 in that. Again,
I got a.
no, I bought it a long time ago, years ago.
I got a 4. Yeah.
Robin Roberts. And again, they're just gorgeous. Shane Dienst. So many people give me a hard time for pronouncing his name wrong. Bob Feller, again, he doesn't have a 54 Tops. He's only in the Bowman. So that's the only 54 Feller card.
I love that card of him. I love
that card. It's really fantastic. Then you've got, again, Gil Hodges has a card in there. That's a recent return from because when, Hodges and Minoso and when these newer guys are getting not newer Hall of Famers, certainly older players, but these Veterans Committee guys, then I have to go scramble and be like, oh crap, I got to start, now there's more cards for that run that I need to get, Yogi Berra has a really great card in the 54 Bowman. You got one of those. Nice. Early win. 300 game winner. Edwin Duke Snyder.
I have one getting graded right now of Duke Snyder.
Looks like you're adding to your collection of these, aren't you? I love it. The Whitey Ford is a really cool card. It's one of the few cards where he's not in a follow-through pose on his card. And then the last one before we talk about the two big cards in the set is the Bob Lemon. So overall, does the design do you find that it's boring? Do you like it? Like, how do you feel about the design of the card?
So put yourself, think about working for Bowman in 1954. Okay, this with Topps coming on, I wonder if Bowman got to see what Topps product looked like, and then said, "Oh no," because like you say, 54 Topps is one of the prettiest cards Topps ever made, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I like the images. I like a lot of the portrait stuff, um, like this in those particular cards. When the in-action stuff came along, that was really cool. But some of the portrait pictures you showed there are, when you lift them up to show them, vintage baseball collectors, or baseball card collectors, or baseball card fans of the old timers will recognize that card before you already get it up there, because that's probably the best looking picture Yogi Berra ever took in his whole entire life.
Right.
But so the design doesn't bother. The design's fine. It's not all fancy and all that kind of stuff, but she's not the prettiest girl at the prom, but you'd go dance with her,
Right.
And I like the design, but it's simple, and it's simple maybe, and that's kind of what I like about it.
Yeah, I mean, the Campy card's a great example of a real close up shot of him in that portrait, and you get to see the expression on his face, and he's just Campanella is one of my favorites too. I love that you love him too. I'm not a huge fan of the Maze card. It's kind of boring to me.
How many Maze cards are you a fan of, though? He's taken
Topps for sure. 51 Bowman, I love.
Yeah.
52 Topps is.
But I like the 53.
Yes.
But he's had a lot of cards that are,
yeah, very meh.
Yeah.
Versus Clemente, who never had a bad card, or Aaron had some boring ones, but he had a lot of good ones too.
But again, if you were working for Bowman in the front office,
yep,
and you sent somebody out to buy a pack of Topps cards in 54, right? And you opened up that card, what would your thoughts have been?
I don't know. I can't be that kid. I remember seeing him for the first time, however many years, decades ago, really. I these have grown on me, no doubt. I don't know that I thought they were ugly. I just like, meh. And over the years, like all the Bowman sets that we'll go through over the next 7 weeks, I love these cards now. I love having them. I do really like the Mantle. The Mickey Mantle is certainly one of the two biggest cards in the set. I have a 3, I think. Yeah. I have a PSA 3.
Another 2.
Which I think is a pretty, centering on these is always an issue. It's true on any vintage set. We say that all the time. Centering is a big deal. Well, it is on every vintage set. So you can rinse and repeat that phrase for all of these that we're going to talk about. But a Bowman card that's nicely centered really stands out because of that white border versus 54 Topps, which is a full, like at the top, it can kind of full bleed if it's a white one or something. You can bad centering on a 54 Topps. It's less distracting. A lot of times,
I always thought I had an off-centered 54 Topps because I thought, man, why is all my cards missing the top border?
Right.
And I've had a couple Ernie Banks cards in my life, and it seems those are almost cut off. The ones that I have had.
Yeah, but the Bowmans are nice. The backs are really clean, simple. The Mantle card's just great. Super expensive, by the way. This is one of Mantle's cards that is kind of shot up in value. I think all of his Bowman cards, which was really, he had a Bowman card every year, right? Because he was a Bowman exclusive from 54 or in 54 and 55, right?
That is correct.
He didn't have a Topps card. But the main, like, holy grail card of this set, if someone said, I want the best card in this set, it is undoubtedly number 66, the Ted Williams, right? And you have a beautiful PSA 3. I have an SGC 1.5. No, I didn't missay that. I do have an SGC card. You heard me say that right. I want to tell the story about this card because it's a good story. You want to hear a story, Chris?
I would love to hear the story.
Okay. So this card I bought at a Dallas show, I want to say a year and a half ago or so. So it was probably early 2022, maybe late 2021. And Dallas show, guy that sets up at every Dallas show. He owns a shop up in Moore, Oklahoma. His name is Mike, and his shop is called MM7 Sports Cards. He's a big Mickey Mantle guy, huge vintage guy, like an amazing collection. And he had this card at his booth that day. And I have bought many cards from him, including my 51 Bowman Mantle PSA 5 I bought from him. And so we've done a lot of deals. He is incredibly generous to me in terms of pricing. And this is a card that I've always wanted. And if you're a vintage guy, you know the story of this card, why it's not in, why it's short printed. I think you and I both agreed when we were talking previously that I don't know that this is a scarce card. You can find them, right? But it's definitely not as prevalent as the, any other card, the Mantle, the whoever else. But definitely harder to find. And because it was pulled because he didn't have a contract with Bowman. And so I saw this card. I'm like, good grief. Why is that a 1.5? And any card that you have to really tilt and look at and whatever to find the imperfections is probably a pretty good card, right? The whole arm's length test, does it look good from that direction? Yes. I mean, if you look at mine, that's pretty great centering.
That's pretty. That is pretty. It's a lot better centered than mine.
Pretty phenomenal coloring. And so what he told me is, hey, pull it up, like look at it really hard, because on the top, it was almost like somebody put a paper clip on the card. There's those, an indentation line down the top. And again, hardly noticeable. You have to try to find it. And he had it, but it's still a 1.5. And so what's great is when you can find cards like this that are beautiful, other than, a slight imperfection that doesn't take away from the card, and you can get it for a cheap price. And this card's not cheap, even in a 1.5, even in an SGC slab. I want to say I could look it up. I can't remember. I'm going to guess $900, $800 to $900. Which when I looked up comps at the time when I was buying, I was like, yeah, that's a good deal. This card regularly in any higher grade is well over $1,000 for this card. Higher grades go for big bucks, just because it's Ted Williams, and I don't know, all the color scheme of this card is so awesome. I love it. The pink box. I love his signature is so beautiful on it. I love the sky behind him. If you're listening to this on podcast, I know, even though I'm showing the card on YouTube, you can see that card. Everybody knows what it looks like because it's just such an iconic card in the hobby. And so that's my, I couldn't buy it fast enough, and I didn't care that it was an SGC slot. I just wanted to own this card, and I was able to find a deal that made sense for me. How did you acquire yours?
So if you notice on let me see, on the tops of these two particular cards right here, the two toughest ones, the Mantle and the Maze.
Mantle and the Williams, you mean?
I mean the Mantle and the Williams, I'm sorry. That I mark them with a yellow happy face thing on the top of my slab, little sticker on the top of my slab, and I try to keep that there to remember that I got these cards when I was 11 or 12 years old, mowing a yard from a lady named Miss Dufresne. Miss Dufresne, I've told the story on my own channel, that she paid me in baseball cards to mow her yard because she thought she was doing me a huge favor. So most of the summer, I'd get done mowing her little tiny yard. She'd get me a glass of lemonade, and I'd go in, and she would say, reach in and grab a stack of cards from her son's collection. Her son had grown up and moved away, and I just reached in and grabbed these. And so now when I get them out, I think of Miss Dufresne, and I think of how lucky I was to be able to mow her yard for $6. Instead of her giving me the $6, I ended up with cards like this. And I
So
just
why did you end up, you ultimately slabbed yours as well? Why did you do that?
When I was just a few years ago, I was doing some estate planning, and I don't have as many cards as you do, but I mean, I have a few thousand. I have a few thousand cards that I knew were worth some money. Okay, and I wanted to make it easier for my wife or my family to be able to do something with the cards if something happened to me. That way, somebody wouldn't come in. There's a grade on there, and so that's going to help her, be able to sell those, and hopefully, you know, hopefully I outlive her by 25 years and spend all the inheritance on baseball cards myself. But no, I think I just didn't want to strap her with that kind of stuff. You see that in what you do. Somebody has a big collection of stuff. They pass away, and now they leave the family to work through those cards. So and my local card shop owner, he said, you need to send them off. You need to send these things off to get graded as well. And so the first time I sent cards off, I sent maybe 20 commons off because I didn't trust the system. And then I got them graded, and I'm so glad I did. You're 1.5 to me. That's a number that I look at last when I'm looking at that card. I don't want to get caught, collecting the slab or the grade. I want to still collect the cards, but I want to slab them up to protect them. Is that similar to what you did? Why did you, who talked you into slabbing your cards, and why?
Oh man. Mainly for protection, certainly of my personal stuff that I knew was real or didn't have any, that I've owned for 30 years, 40 years. It was never a problem about that. It was protection. And when I started buying cards, it was more for wanting to buy a real card and not getting duped. Because like all of us, when we start in vintage, I was no vintage expert at the very beginning. And I was afraid that, man, as I start buying some of these higher dollar cards, I really want at least another opinion that the card is authentic. The numerical grade was not unimportant to me. I wanted a nice looking card. Nice looking cards typically have, 4s, 5s, 6s, in that range for vintage cards. And so because I wanted a nice card, I gravitated towards those higher grades. I didn't need 8s, and stuff, 7s and 8s on a lot of this stuff. But if I found a 7 or an 8 that I could afford, and again, this is years ago during the building process of a collection, wish people would just really internalize that. I've done even full episodes on collecting being a marathon and not a sprint, and just the fact that it takes a lot of time to get there and have a collection. And, Dr. Beckett telling me you need to build the best collection that you can. You don't need to have the highest grade. You don't need to have the this or the that. Build the best collection. And that just has always stuck with me as an incredibly wise way to look at it. And luckily, I felt like I was doing that already. So it was more reinforcement for me of what I was doing. The fact that I bought the Williams in an SGC was the same rationale that a lot of us go through when we're deciding a card to buy as well. A PSA version of that's X dollars more. Do I really care about the slab it's in? I do, but at the same time, I'd rather have the card, period, than the card in the right slab. I'd rather have the card at the right price, at the right eye appeal. All of those things trumped which slab it was in, especially for a special card like that. If it's a Richie Ashburn that, there's not much difference in a PSA or an SGC or any other grading company, then I'm going to, if I have to spend $10 more to get the PSA one, I'm going to do that. That is not true for the Ted Williams card. The mantle, and again, the mantle I bought 10, 12 years ago. So it's, it was a different world then. Cards were still expensive, but it's not the same. And especially the low end, like this is a 3. Back then, that was way, way cheaper. It still is, but it was even more dramatically cheaper back in those days. So, wow, we really got off tangent on the 54 Bowman and how great it is. But I wish it had the rookies. If I could go back and in time and be sitting at the Bowman, decision table when they're deciding on this set and who to put in it and all that. Those key rookies are missing. I don't think that diminishes from the place that 54 Bowman holds in the hobby. I think it's a very well-liked set, and I hope more people appreciate it over time. Any other thoughts that you want to talk about the 54 Bowman?
I just back to the Ted Williams just a little bit.
Yeah.
When I was growing up and getting a price guide and stuff and reading stories, I remember coming across a story, and you talked about it early, but how scarce the Ted Williams was. And back in the day, they compared it to being just barely one of the hardest ones to get outside the Honus Wagner and the Lazarus, yeah, and the Eddie Plank, T206 Eddie Plank, and they since they pulled that card, I was told by a lot of different things, different publications, how scarce that card was, and it was back in the day. Also, error cards were probably worth more than what they put more value on them as what they do today. And that was always like the number one, and then number one or number two that they talked about on the countdown. And so I'm glad I'm able to afford that Ted Williams, or, I didn't pay for it, but it's not near as scarce for somebody to get today. I think you could pick one up at the National pretty easy. It's going to cost you some money. But just like you say, you had over 20 Hall of Famers. Wouldn't you rather have your 20 cards as a collector, 20 of those different cards, than one super nice Mickey Mantle in a 7 or an 8? And I think the answer is yes if you're a collector.
100%.
And
100%.
Yeah. So,
and there are people out there that think, no, I'd rather have the nice mantle. I don't understand it, but they also don't understand why I feel the way I feel, and that's okay. But I definitely would rather have. I've always said I want a quantity of quality, and not the best cards. The high people say this all the time because I just recently went over 3,000 Hall of Fame autographs in my collection. Wow. Why do I need 3,000? The answer is I don't. And people say, well, why don't you sell off all your doubles and triple? I have players that I have, 40 autographs of that are in the Hall of Fame. Why not sell 39 of them and buy a super nice card? And the answer is because I like all of them. I didn't buy them just because, I bought them because they fit a project, or I liked the way they looked, or I liked the player, or they were cheap. I mean, pick your reason. There's a lot of them for me. And so I'm not a guy that thinks that way. I don't even consider selling off all these cards and buying a nice mantle. Like that wouldn't even enter my mind.
I agree 100%. 100%. Yeah. But you don't have a lot of duplicates in your regular cards, in your slabbed cards. Am I correct by saying
zero?
That?
Well, not zero. I have one 60 tops card Yastrzemski, but that's because that was the first vintage card I ever bought. It came back a 3. It's a very special card to me. And then I bought a 6 just to have a nicer example of my collection. But yeah, rarely. So I don't have 5 Ted Williams or 3 Mazes or whatever. They're just, I have one, and the one I get. And well, why don't you upgrade? Why don't you sell it? And wouldn't you? And the answer is no. I've got the Ted Williams. I'm never going to look for this card again. I don't need to. I already have it. I'd rather spend that money on cards I don't yet have.
And I do have some duplicates, but what I'm doing is I'm going through my boxes systematically of non-graded cards, and I'm getting them graded. And I set up at shows, some, not a whole lot, maybe 4 or 5 times, 6 times a year, but I set up at shows, and I use the proceeds that I make at the shows to buy a graded card that I don't have.
Right.
And that's what I do. So you were the first person I watched ever on YouTube, you and Ray from Philly. And I've followed your lead on that, as far as getting a quantity of quality. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I followed that.
Yeah, it's just, again, you don't have to. You guys do whatever out there. As you're a collector, do whatever you want. But it just made sense to me, and I'm glad I hear that from a lot of people, honestly, Chris, and I appreciate that you feel that way. Again, I'm not asking people to do what I do just because I know it all. I certainly don't. But this is just how I chose to do it, and it makes sense to me. So, yeah, I don't know. Would you say this set is underappreciated today, or fairly appreciated, or not, or overappreciated? Where would you say it fits in the psyche of the hobby?
I think it's underappreciated. I do think it's a little underappreciated because, again, it's a 1954 card, and it just so happens to be the same year of the best set, or what a lot of people say are the best one of 3, the top 3 sets of tops. And it did miss out on the rookie Hall of Famers. And so, but I do think that people are appreciating the Hall of Famers more. And with the low number of cards there are in the set, set collectors and set builders are learning to go after these cards more.
Because what's there, 224 cards? I mean, that's nothing, relatively speaking. Yeah, I wish I had dupes of all my cards and that I could sell. That'd be great. So I envy you for having that chance to be able to do that. And again, you're using that to fund additional purchases into your collection. I think that's a smart thing to do. If I had doubles, I'd be selling them too to get other stuff. But I get it. What am I thinking?
I don't on this 54 set, one of the things that you were talking about is would you change anything to it, to the card itself? And the thing that I would change, but I'm going to change my mind. But the thing that I don't particularly care about is there's a signature at the bottom of these cards. It's inside that little pastel box that you were talking about, and that box doesn't go all the way across the bottom of the card.
Yeah.
And if you look, there's just dead space there. And so, my thoughts originally was, oh, maybe they should have put another picture down there, or a little baseball glove that said what position they played or something like that. But then as you think about it, that changes the card to make it look like it's another card. And so one of the things I appreciate about this set is I don't think I would change a thing, because that makes it unique to me. The white borders around there, that's not unique. The portraits and the staged photos, that's not unique. But that on the bottom is pretty unique, and I think I wouldn't want it to change.
If anything, I agree. Maybe you just extend the pastel box all the way across the bottom. But All right. Here's what we're gonna have a little fun. I'm gonna ask you some trivia questions from the back of the 54 Bowmans.
Oh no. Okay.
For you guys out there, if you're an old school person like me or Chris, we read the back of our baseball cards. Like it was a learning tool for us, not just something to be put on the back of a card.
But read them 45 years ago for me, though.
Yeah, it's been a while, honestly, for me as well. So I certainly don't know any of these answers. Here we go. This is the back of the mantle card. This is the trivia question. I'll only ask you 3 or 4, and then we'll wrap this up. But what modern American leaguer is first to have a batting average over 400 in a decade?
Ted Williams, right?
That's right. 1941, 406. So that's on the back of that mantle card. That's pretty cool.
And did not win the MVP.
I know. Joe DiMaggio won.
Right.
He also did something pretty special that year, too. So
he did.
41 is a pretty great year. Okay. The back of the Ted Williams card. Who led Major League record for bases on balls for 6 consecutive years?
It's probably Ted Williams.
It is Ted Williams. Ted Williams is the answer to his trivia question on his own card, which is, oh, by the way, he's 2 for 2. I wonder if they're all
honest. I haven't looked at that. I promise you.
Okay. This is Nellie Fox's. What player threw a baseball the fastest?
Bob Feller at that time.
Yeah.
Or Bob Feller. There was a Kovaleski threw it really hard back in the day, but I think they're going to go with Bob Feller probably.
The answer on the card is Mark Koenig for the Yankees threw a ball 127 miles an hour in 1930. I call BS on that. I don't think that would probably who could throw a ball 127 miles. I don't think they really kind of knew that back then. All right, here we go. This is the back of Minnie Minosa's card. Who holds the National League record for bases loaded circuit drives, meaning the National League record for grand slams, basically? They called them bases loaded circuit drives. How cool.
Wow. Okay. Well, the American League had to be Lou Gehrig, right?
It was, yep, at the time.
So National League, and this is 54.
Yep.
Oh gosh, I'm Melott.
It was Rogers Hornsby.
Wow. Okay.
He had 12 grand slams.
Did you know that before you read that?
I did not. I did not. I'm going to admit it. Okay. All the DiMaggio brothers have the same middle name. Vince, Dom, and Joe. What's their middle name?
Lawrence, I'm guessing.
Paul is their middle name. I did not know that either. I'm learning. See, hopefully you guys out there are learning something too. We'll do 2 more and then we'll wrap this up. I'm looking for good ones too. I'm not just throwing them out there. That's an umpire question. Nobody's going to know that.
Cal Hubbard.
that would be a good answer to any question. Yeah, there's another umpire question. They must have been really struggling here. Okay, this is the back of Eddie Matthews' card number 64. Who made 8 doubles in 3 consecutive games, establishing a major league record? So over 3 games, he had 8 doubles.
So back in the day, who hit a lot of doubles like Rogers Hornsby did? George Sisler.
Yeah. It's actually Red Sheendienst in 1949.
Wow.
All right. I'm going to 2 more because I'm going to do the Mays and I'm going to do the Campanella. I keep saying 2 more, but this is really 2 more. Okay.
It'd be more impressive if I'd get the next 2 correct.
I will be. And one of the answers that you just gave is the answer to this question. Who holds the American League record for the most base hits in one season?
George Sisler with like 240.
257 is how many in 1920. George Sisler. Who broke that record? Do you know who broke his record?
Did Ichiro break it?
He did. Ichiro broke that. That's a Pretty cool thing. All right, this is the back of Roy Campanella's card. What player never hit into a double play in 154 games in 1935? You will never, ever get this. I could give you 4,000 guesses. It's a guy named Augie Gallen.
Wow.
How about that? 154 games. He never hit into a double play. That's pretty good.
That's amazing.
We'll end with that on the trivia, but that's kind of fun, right? Like people don't pay attention to the back of the cards anymore. And just go read through your 54 Bowmans, whatever you have. I think you'll have a good time and be entertained. So any final thoughts, Chris, before we go?
No, I appreciate you having me on. This is, like I say, I love this set. It's a lot of history to me personally. And I hope whoever's watching this can gain some appreciation from this Bowman set, and then from the Bowman sets you have coming up. I mean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Bowman cards from each set out as you have your guests on and follow along with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys to be a part of this series with us and all the different people that I'm going to have on talking about these sets. I'm really excited. I've got the next two lined up. I'm not going to give you any hints. You'll just have to show up for those. They're already scheduled to be recorded. So I'm looking forward to it as much. I've learned a lot through this process. I'm excited about the next few weeks to learn more about each of these sets. So thank you, Chris, for joining this week. And thank you to everybody out there for watching. Thank you for listening, supporting the podcast. Really appreciate it. If you want to reach out to me, you can on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Baseball Collector Mike. If you want to catch more of Chris, he has a great YouTube channel called Chris from Missouri. It's incredibly simple. Go find him, go watch him, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We'll catch you guys soon. Keep collecting.